Welcome to Sparking Success with Aaron Opalewski. Aaron brings you conversations that spark innovation, cultivate leadership skills, and pave the way for your business success. In each episode, we delve into the dynamic world of business and leadership, exploring strategies, insights, and success stories that fuel your professional journey.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sparking Success. My name is Aaron Opalewski, and today we're joined by Bill Kozyra. Bill, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here in person with us today.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate the invite.
It's great having you, man. So I'm looking forward to this today. You know, we were talking a little bit before we started, and usually I have 5 or 6 things down, and I just kept going. I'm like, man, I got 11 things down to talk about.
Nice.
So we'll see. But before I get into the questions, I want to give a quick bio on Bill. So Bill's a 4th-generation automotive industry leader with 20-plus years of experience in manufacturing, supply chain, and operations management. He's worked for several large Tier 1 automotive suppliers, as well as now running his own family-owned private business, Wilko Plastics. He has managed large manufacturing facilities, oversaw regions, and led corporate-level company-wide departments. He has experience in plastic injection, molding, extrusion, tube roll forming, welding, bending, fabrication, steel machining, stamping, and automation. His educational background is in business management with a bachelor in business management from Oakland University and an MBA from Detroit Mercy. Some assume he's an engineer by trade or education, but he's actually a business guy with a strong finance background who's been trained to lead in technical manufacturing environments. That was a lot to say, but I thought it was a good frame to start as we get into your story. And I wanted to share all that to make sure we kind of frame things out. So,
yeah, perfect.
Welcome, man.
Thank you. Very much a local product, you could say. A range of local experiences and my whole educational path kind of got me to where I'm at. But yeah, I went to Oakland University, very large public commuter school, if you will, here in the area. Complete opposite experience at University of Detroit Mercy, smaller private Jesuit, not as much a commuter school down in the city versus out in the suburbs. So I've tried to get that full range of local exposure and experience, not only in my career, but also, in my educational path as well. So,
okay. So 20 plus years of, business experience, specifically in manufacturing. Walk us through that kind of journey that led up to, I believe it was in 23 or 22 where you guys acquired
2022, July 2022.
Okay. So July 22, you acquire Wilko Plastics, but a lot went into the journey up to that point. So,
yeah.
Elco
was Wilko when we bought it.
Alco Plastics, correct?
Yeah, Alco Plastics. We renamed it into Wilko, which I can get into that later. But going back to the whole path, so yeah, as you mentioned, 4th generation leader in the auto industry. My great grandfather immigrated over here from Poland in the early 1900s. So part of that industrial revolution, early auto industry era, where people are coming in from all sorts of different countries, a lot from Europe, Eastern Europe, for opportunities here in the U.S., specifically in the Midwest. And he came in, took a position, worked for Ford when they were first getting started. And then my grandfather, his son, worked for Ford and General Motors throughout his career. And he, at one point, decided he was going to go off on his own. It started a company called Modelcraft, which did tool and die work, but more wood model making. So prior to CAD and computers, the way that tooling, molds, or stamping dies were built was that they were built off actual wood models instead of computer math data or computer models. So they would make full-scale parts out of mahogany or other woods based on what it was to achieve the tight, tolerances that you would have to make a sample part to build tooling off of. So very unique niche wood model making business. So he was a wood model maker, but specifically as it tied into tool and die. That obviously became obsolete.
Yeah.
Somewhere around the 1980s, the advancement of computers and CAD completely wiped that out, because you were able to now design parts and molds off the computer, of computer aided design, and that revolutionized that whole industry, and really put wood model makers like him out of business. So here he is, in his last 10, 15 years of his career. A wood model maker by trade has to figure out something new to do. And he became a CAD designer for General Motors. So they actually hired him in. He learned very late in life, learned how to use a computer, got very good at it. But the cards were probably stacked against him to be able to make that transition in his 50s, going on 60, going towards retirement, to really try to keep up with the technology to keep him able to work and even able to contribute in the industry. So he took all his tool and die and prototype knowledge and really evolved, with technology all at the later part of his career. That was my grandfather's career path. My father originally started working for my grandfather at Modelcraft. My father had the foresight to know that this was not going to be around once computers came of age. So my dad graduated from college in the early 80s, and he knew the writing was on the wall. And it was a tough conversation, but he essentially had to tell my grandpa, "Hey, I'm going to work for this other local company and not get into the wood model making, because I can't be somewhere that I can't spend my whole career."
I can imagine that was a tough
That was very tough.
conversation.
Yeah. It was the family business. It was kind of what he was trained in, what he was expected to take over, and it was losing relevancy. It was becoming obsolete technology and obsolete trade. So my father, who was going to engineering school at University of Detroit at the time, took a co-op opportunity with the Bud Company.
Okay. Yep.
And Bud Company is not really around anymore. The remnants of it were purchased by ThyssenKrupp and later split up. But Bud Company was very much established, coming of age, steel stamping, and steel fabrication, welded assemblies, a lot of frame, structural, vehicle components, body parts, as well as brake and wheel. So he worked his way up as an engineer at the plant, all the way to running their wheel and brake division by the age of 37. He was president of a division at a fairly large tier 1 at the time.
Yeah.
And he kind of never second guessed that opportunity to leave the family business and get into something that could really be his career path in his future. So he spent roughly 20 years, I want to say, at Bud, and he ended up being acquired by his division, being acquired by Allied Signal, then by Bosch. Ultimately, he ended up leaving Bosch to go to Continental, who was their direct competitor, and spent his time at Continental until the late 90s, and ultimately decided he wanted to leave a German company, work for a company where he could have global control. That's how he ended up at TI. Spent the last, I want to say 14 years of his career at TI, and ultimately retired there.
TI Automotive.
Right. as the president and CEO, and at one time chairman there. When TI transitioned from being a privately owned company to a publicly owned company, he had to give up the chairman title, because as a public company, you had to have a non-executive, non-day-to-day chairman. This was kind of how it worked. He retired from TI. Not that he's not still somewhat working, but he's kind of behind the scenes now with Wilko. So the way that Alco and Wilko came about was just after COVID, he had made the decision. He was ready to retire, move on, and do something else. And he had always talked to me about investment opportunities and kind of what I would do if, I could do something from scratch, or kind of find another segment within the same industry on a smaller scale and grow it. And he knew he didn't want to retire and disappear, but he didn't want to have to work day to day. He said, what with your experience and knowledge and everything you've kind of acquired over, at that point, the last 18 years or so, where's your comfort zone? What's the, space we could be in that we could be successful? And I said, hey, I've been around plastic injection molding at that point now for 10 years, pretty heavily on the fuel system side. I had ran plants that did injection molding. I had been on the supply chain managing suppliers that were producing injection molding parts. So I had been in, 100 different injection molding facilities across the U.S. And my exposure and experience was very tied. And I would say, out of all the different roles or experiences I had, that was the most recent, most familiar for me. And I said, I've got the bandwidth and the resources to do it. At that time, I was only 37 years old, so a lot of runway left to go do something, and a lot of motivation, a lot of energy to do it. So we had kind of started to look for businesses, and the Alco opportunity had come about too soon at one point. It came around just before COVID.
Okay.
The timing wasn't right. My dad was not ready to retire. He was still going strong, so it was kind of the right opportunity at the wrong time. When COVID hit, a lot of acquisitions and private equity work really, really slowed down for these guys. So the company kind of went off market or kind of not for sale for some time because there wasn't the right interest at the right price at that time for the current ownership. So they kind of took a break from actively trying to find a buyer, and it kind of came back up at the end of 2021 that, hey, the same deal from 2 years ago is still there, but it's a little bit different. Some changes with how the real estate and it was being involved in the deal, and a little bit different structure. And COVID changed a lot, and it changed a lot for small companies. And Alco was an example of a great small local company here in Romeo, Michigan, that had a private family ownership with no true succession plan with the owner at that time. And what's great is Dan Conway, the prior owner, he had a vision for the company to protect the culture, the environment, and the long-term viability of the company for everybody who worked there. So he was very, very selective about who would buy the company, what conditions, what strategy, how they were going to handle it. So he was the right fit for us. We were the right fit for him. The timing had finally lined up. Yeah. My dad was out of the picture at TI, and I was ready to make a move. And we worked through it. We got the due diligence done under 6 months, and yeah, for a company that size, it's not a huge company, but it's still a pretty decent size, tier 2, tier 3 injection molder with roughly 8 different active customers. There was a lot to get through. 300 active production part numbers. There was quite a bit. We did it in a very short, condensed time frame. Got it done, and by July 1st, I was in an all new position at a completely different size company, out of the larger corporate tier 1 role, and kind of at the starting point for what I'm now 2 years into with Wilko, and just having rebranded Alco. So that's kind of the long-winded version of where I started and how I ended up where we're at right now.
Yeah, man. Thank you for taking me through that. I want to look here because I want to see just where we go next from that. So let's get into the business investment side of this. I had this down, but you talked about, to me, because we've merged some companies. I've done one acquisition outside of the workforce solutions space. It's one of the other businesses that I'm a part of, but 6 months is moving on that. What's some important things that you're looking for as it relates to like doing proper diligence on if there's a fit or not?
Yeah. So coming into all this, my experience was with these very large tier 1s, automotive suppliers. So I didn't have the smaller business experience, private business experience. things like payroll and accounts payable, accounts receivable, all these shared services, I either took for granted or I wasn't exposed to. I was in a
I'm
role.
going to make some people listen to that.
I was in a role
That's great.
that just fully focused on my function.
There you go.
Didn't have to worry about a thing. And then I came into this role where every day you've got your routine, you're doing banking, you're approving expenses, you're looking at cash, you're forecasting what your sales are, what your cash is. So I worked in an environment where a lot of those things I had other departments taking care of, not having to worry about it, where
just did your thing.
Yeah. Where now I'm looking at, financial strategies and banking strategies on a daily basis. And one of them is investment opportunities. So this was the first investment that I really had, or I'll say acquisition, I had experience hands-on with. My father had been through a bunch in his career.
Sure. Probably as TI acquired.
As TI acquired. Yeah. TI made several big acquisitions. The big ones for him were at Continental, they acquired Motorola's automotive division. Most people didn't even know Motorola, who was all cell phones at the time, had an automotive division. Well, they had the automotive telematics. So now when vehicles are connected to phones, had their own phone number, have OnStar, have all these different cellular capabilities in the vehicle, that came by way of Continental acquiring Motorola at the time and really taking all that to the next level. They also acquired Siemens VDO, which was a lot of dashboard display electronics. So it really bridged them into this infotainment space and kind of changed Continental from just making tires and brakes. It changed the whole space they were in and able to compete in. But that said, he had a lot of firsthand exposure to acquisitions and mergers. So he brought in all that experience. All this was pretty trivial for him. And we're going to do due diligence. We're going to do this. We're going to negotiate on this. And we're not worried about that. And he had his plan like he could do it in his sleep. I'm like, hey, I'm learning. Can we slow this down? I'm learning what an acquisition is from the inside out. When you were doing acquisitions, I was off running plants and making sure we got parts to the customers.
That shows, I talk about like capacity to do things, and it expands over time. So there's like an example of like, okay, you're here in your first acquisition, and your dad's been involved in all these high profile acquisitions, and just the capacity to kind of move and get that done. And you're trying to keep up with that speed.
Well, it's completely second nature for him. It was equivalent to if he came in and into the plant and wanted to see how we make something. And for me, it's just boom, boom, boom. We're doing this. We're turning it into this, and then it goes here, and we do this, and
he's like, "Whoa, slow down." And you're like,
so it's kind of worked both ways. But I guess where the strength is bringing both of those together and finding how much more we can do with both his approach and my experience and my approach to things. So he had started, and this is kind of funny, it ties back to something I mentioned a little bit ago. He had started his own company with Model Craft Inc. So after my grandpa closed up shop on the family business, my dad kept that company name registered and owned so that if he ever needed to use it for something.
Okay.
And as soon as he retired from TI, he already had, opportunities to sit on different boards, do consulting opportunities. He needed some company to be a revenue center or, an organization for him to say, hey,
here's my business to do.
Here's my business. I'm retired, but I still have a business. Yeah. So he decided I'm going to use Model Craft because I've still got that company registered.
How many years later was that?
Yeah. Like, from a 40-year dormant company comes back out with the name.
I like that.
The logo and everything, like acting like it, it never disappeared.
That gives me hope. I got a couple of dormant ones. I'm like, well,
there you go.
There you go.
Yeah. So
someday we'll use this.
He's like, hey, I've already got licensing on this. It's ready to go. I'm going to use this as my parent company. For everything.
Okay.
So he set up Model Craft, and then always kept me as some named official on Model Craft, just to have more than one name with the state and licensing and all those purposes. But he used Model Craft to acquire Alco at the time.
Okay.
And then the way that we set it up is 4 separate entities. So this was kind of part of our strategy to have a plastics operating business, which is Wilko Plastics.
Okay. So it's
That's the operations of all the plastic injection molding. We have Wilko Equipment Leasing, which leases equipment to Wilko Plastics.
makes sense. Yeah.
We have Wilko Real Estate, which owns all the buildings.
Okay.
And then we have Wilko Marketing and Entertainment.
Okay.
So not to get in the weeds, but we have 2 LLCs, 1 S Corp and 1 C Corp, and each has different legal and tax advantages to doing so. So the big thing, when you look at setting up an LLC and limiting your liability is you're liable for any hard assets you own.
Mm-hmm.
So if you keep that operating company not owning actual physical assets, then you're really limiting your liability. So that's why the actual plastics operating company does not own any of the capital, real estate, or the equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got these separate entities all set up for their own individual purpose, supporting each other. That said, they were all kind of set up to support the one, 4 different businesses to support one broader one. But then we start branching out and doing things with different portions of each. And hey, can Wilko Real Estate go do separate real estate investments that aren't directly tied to the day-to-day operation of Wilko Plastics?
Like there's the internal division and the external division of that.
Yeah. So just as a spinoff or by way of having these 4 different entities, we're able to get into into other diversified investments just naturally because we talk about Wilko Plastics. We've got 3 buildings and about 100,000 square feet of total floor space. Well, we're maxed out. We've got no space left, and you probably know the challenges even just with office space. And once you run out of space, you better have a plan to get something else. So we're working on where we're going to go next, and we're building. We're looking at building twice the space as what we need today for future expansion. Awesome. But that comes with finding the real estate. Where are you going to find the real estate to have a 200,000 square foot building with a 20,000 square foot office in the front? So we're getting into those diversified investments. Some may just be investments. Some may be to support the current business. But that's what I would say. It's kind of been spinoffs of these 4 different entities that have led us to different opportunities. And then now you've got the marketing and entertainment, which is branched into Wilko Racing, which is
I was wondering if that was
a little bit more of a hobby than a business, but nonetheless, it's supported by all the other business activities, which is cool, and it gets our name and our brand out. And speaking about the brand and the name, because I keep saying Alco and Wilko. When we purchased the business, the company was called Alco. Mm-hmm. That was named after Dan Conway's father, Adrian Lee Conway. So it was ALCO, CO for Conway, and we had that for a while. And this is kind of back to the acquisition strategy is we wanted some continuity of small things going through the transition, not only for customers but also for the team employee base. Hey, we're not just buying this, flipping it, and completely changing everything. We're going to have some continuity. We're going to take the best of what was there, the best of what existed in terms of the business and the strategy, and build upon it. And I would say coming in and using the Alco name for a year, which Dan Conway fortunately let us do, allowed us to have that continuity and stability in front of customers. Hey, yeah, we're still Alco Plastics. Yeah. We're still shipping in Alco boxes. We're new ownership. And same with the employee base and the culture. So not that we had to do it. We could have changed the name day one. But we kind of wanted to have some stability and smoothness to that transition. So kept the name, kept things as they were. Yeah. I would say customer and employee facing. Meanwhile, we were never Alco. We just had a DBA agreement to use it like a brand name. Yeah. We were Wilko Plastics from day one. And I kind of said, hey, I'm going to prove myself to these customers, to these people before I'm going to change the name.
Yeah.
And ultimately we changed it to Wilko, Wilko. Sounds like Alco, same nomenclature, similar nomenclature format, but new name. And we used the new name to kind of jumpstart the whole rebranding, new logo, new company colors, new signage, just complete update refresh, because the company didn't really have that and needed it. Elko had more of a font than a logo, I would say.
Okay.
And it was just dated, needed a refresh, and we used the opportunity to update the name. And at that point, it was pretty easy a year later to change the name after everything.
Once people got to know you guys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for them, it wasn't a big deal. I mean, it even from day one when they were at Elko with day one with us at Elko, they'd notice on their paychecks the legal entity was saying Wilko Plastics Inc. that was writing their check, so it wasn't a completely foreign name. They knew there were some legal ties, some legal
Didn't come out of nowhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was pretty easy to make that switch, and the timing was right. And if I could go back, I wouldn't have changed anything that we did or the way we did it, to be honest. So
yeah, I think one thing that people around here hear me say more and more is like, don't use the light switch approach. Like, we kind of phase into stuff. It doesn't, don't make extreme changes. And it's something that I had to learn in business. Like, and I hear it all over that. It's like, work your way into something, because people naturally don't love change. Clients don't love change, but what's most important is the people behind, the business and providing the service or the product or both. And so you allow for that time period for that to all happen and for everyone to see like, hey, things are good. Like, this is great. And, you got these little subtle things like what it says on their check. Like, okay, it makes sense. And just ease into that transition rather than going day one. So
yeah, exactly.
I hear that all over that, and I've found that to be true in my experience, that's worked better for us, even though early on I probably took the opposite approach more so. And it was like thinking, oh, we have to make, big moves to make a big splash. Well, sometimes, but the context of that is the more we can slightly nudge things for the biggest impact. Like, that's what's really moved the needle, like, big time for us as we've grown, is like find the areas to do that. You know? And this is any acquisition, like it's already big enough. So whatever you can do to make a transition period is good.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of knew going in day one, hey, I'm not going to make drastic changes. Probably in the first 3 to 6 months, I'm going to evaluate the people that are there. Everybody's going to have a chance to stay on with the new company. It's not I don't want people to feel that, they're not safe to come to work or they're re-interviewing for their job every day, but they still had to prove themselves, but they had a significant amount of time to prove that, hey, they should still be there. They still wanted to be there. It was a fit. And to be honest, I retained probably 70 to 80% of the staff.
That's great.
And even ended up promoting several now directors from within that were underutilized talent under the previous regime. And it, it was a big adjustment for them in that the biggest adjustment for them was I was coming in to grow the business. The prior owner had a cap on how much he wanted to do in sales. So he spent more time turning away business than quoting new business. So when I first arrived, I said, we're open for new business. We're going to quote new business.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, our current customers had so much pent up demand for using Alco for more capacity that for the first year or so, I didn't have to really onboard any new customers. I just opened the door to new business with existing customers.
You just took more orders.
Yeah. Yep. We took on new purchase orders, and a big thing for us was we struggled initially to really take on new business or even get quote opportunities with other new customers because we weren't IATF certified. So this is the big, fairly industry-wide accreditation for automotive suppliers. And I had been through TS and IATF, and ISO, the predecessor to that. And I came in and Alco was not IATF. And I said, well, that's going to be my single biggest hurdle,
That's
but
your-
also
yeah.
biggest opportunity.
Yeah.
Was
So that you
get-
probably
was getting
focused on that
Yeah.
out of the
And when I brought up the IATF phrase, people were scared out of their mind of that term, and that's going to cost an arm and a leg, and it's going to take 5 years to do. We'll never achieve it. We're going to have to hire a whole department to do it. Guys, I've done this before. There's smaller and less sophisticated companies than us that have it, so we're going to do it. There's no reason we should be disqualified from doing business because of this accreditation, and ultimately, it makes you a better company in manufacturing to go through the process. And my employees learn that, hey, this isn't so bad. It brought the team more together. It was a new initiative. And it took us until January of this year to officially become IATF. So I spent 18 months doing what,
congrats.
doing what some internally said will probably
Take
never
5 years.
will never happen. So now that I'm IATF, there's a lot more doors that open in the industry because it's become a basic prerequisite that we were missing out on when I came in day one. So
That's awesome.
Yep.
That's got to be, because just like you're evaluating the team, right? And I want to get into team building in a minute, but as you're evaluating the team's also evaluating you guys.
Yep.
And that's got to be a good thing for the culture to see like that be pulled off. And it's like, like anyone that was uncertain on that, to see that come to fruition, that's got to bode well for their buy-in to what was going on.
100%.
So
Yep.
that's awesome.
It was huge for us.
So, okay, you guys acquired the business, and you said you had 70 to 80% retention. You mentioned in some of the stuff you sent to us, I didn't read this off, but you view yourself as like kind of at the pulse of company culture. And I think that's great. Anytime I see that in a leader, I'm like, man, like I line up well with this person, because I feel like that's the number one job of the leader, is to set the tempo on that, to lead by example, to really protect that and embody that, and then have that radiate out of them for other people to see and latch on to. So, but there's different nuances that come from doing that from like the ground up to when you're acquiring something. So you guys have had a great retention rate. You've been able to elevate some people within the organization. How did you go about building maintaining the team, building the team, and how do you kind of set the vision for like this big win that you guys had? Like, right, like that's got to be an opportunity to launch the 3 to 5 year plan for what's coming
exactly.
next.
That was like number 2 out of the 4 key initiatives coming in, was that certification. But on the culture item, we looked at the opportunity before the acquisition and said, hey, this company's got a great small family based culture, very close knit, tied in with the community, which I think is huge, especially for being a smaller local supplier, very tied in with the local Romeo community. We have people that have worked there their whole life and love it. We have people that have left there and come back because they didn't like it elsewhere as much.
It's always a good testament to what's going on.
We've had people leave multiple times and come back. And then I've had people walk in the door. This happens almost once a month that, hey, I used to work here 10, 15 years ago. The company's future wasn't so certain. Hey, I heard it's going well. Do you have anything open? I'd love to come back. And we have pretty good records of, hey, what terms people left on. Could they be hired back in? But there's a lot of people that we've hired back that used to work there that want to be there and are great assets. So that's kind of bodes to the company culture and the climate. And looking at it, my father and myself coming from the larger tier 1 corporate side, even at the bigger companies, we always found the family culture, the family environment to be the best, where people are still getting together and doing things and having fun outside of work. And I don't mean necessarily everybody having to be best friends that work together.
Yeah.
I've worked with friends and it's worked, and I've worked with friends and it's not worked.
Same.
And that's a whole
Both.
another topic we could spend a ton of time on. And I'm very, very careful about, personal relationships and who I work with, because they've gone both ways, as they typically can. But we like that people are close and get along well, and like to do things outside of work and get together, have company parties. We've got a picnic coming up that should be really fun before the weather ends. But going to sporting events, getting out and going out for the holidays, and trying to build upon that, because they had a good foundation of close family environment.
Okay.
But they didn't really necessarily capitalize on planning events and pushing things to the next level on further developing those relationships. So I would say the good foundation or footprint was there to build that culture, and now we are. We have in total close to 140 employees, and average seniority is well over 10 years. So got a lot of people that retire from there.
Yeah.
Seems like just, we do quarterly anniversary awards. Every quarter, I'm giving someone an award for 30, 35, 40 years there, which is amazing. And
wow.
Even through the transition and rebranding and company name, we still are recognizing all that seniority and talent, and, or I'll say, experience and loyalty to the company.
Yeah.
And that was tough to do. I was afraid that I wouldn't see that same level of loyalty after renaming, rebranding, and kind of rebirthing the company.
That was
Am I going to still have that
concern
loyalty?
of it? You probably felt the tug to do it, but you have that concern at the same time. Okay.
But we've kept that close-knit family environment, knowing everybody by name, knowing something that's going on in their life. I try to get in and have meetings and spend time with the off shifts, because we are around the clock. That can be a challenge logistically. We've got people that have worked their whole careers from 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. and
Got it. Yeah.
don't ever have a plan or desire to work on any other shift.
Yeah.
Or the ones working afternoons. You don't get as much time with them, but you want to be sure they're benefiting from that same that culture that is, I would say, spreading out across all shifts.
Okay. So I have a question for you on this, because I feel like we do an okay job of this, but between growing fast, the dynamics changing, just different variables, right? Like, we're trying to figure out the best way. Like, we do a picnic, we do some things. We're big on communication and trying to get everyone together. We did this one way kind of pre-COVID, and now we have a mix of, like, we just walked, like, a lot of people are in here, but we have a decent portion of the team that works around the country or flexes in and out, or is mostly remote. So some of these things have some nuance to figuring out the best way to do them. And I don't know that there is, but like sporting events, you guys have 140 people.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that? Like,
well, we
what's
don't
your
necessarily
approach
all go to one.
Okay.
I do a lot of
Good.
raffles and giveaways. Right.
Okay.
So from time to time, I'll have tickets to an event, and I'll say, hey, anybody, I've got 4 tickets.
Yeah.
And I used to I learned this is by trial and error. Used to just pick a name out of the hat and say, hey, they're your tickets. Well,
Okay.
the person can't go. They're probably selling the tickets or
Yeah.
giving them away, or who knows. So I ask for only people to enter into these things that have a true desire
To do it.
to go and
Okay.
use the tickets themselves. Give the example, we have company tickets for the Detroit Lions, and it's a big draw. Everybody's always asking about them.
I can imagine.
And I ask that, and it's kind of honor system. I ask that, hey, put your name in this if you want to go, if you want the experience. Don't do it to try to win something to go sell it. I mean, I can't stop you from doing that. That's not the intent of these types of
It's
programs.
for you to go and enjoy it.
It's for you to go and enjoy it yourself. So, it makes people think a little bit about what they sign up for, what they get into. But we still get a lot of people that put in for those ticket raffles, and I'll kind of do it spontaneously.
Okay.
To be honest, I don't have like a future preset date. It's, hey, if I'm not able to go or not able to take a customer or client, and we're not going to let them go to waste, we'll make sure that we use them internally one way or another. We do that with Tigers tickets, done that with Red Wings and Lions.
So you hit the
Pistons need to get better, and we'll do it.
Yeah. You hit a couple of different buckets, and it's like, okay, whatever you have interest in,
exactly.
sign up for that raffle.
Exactly. So, and even sometimes for like concerts at DTE,
Okay.
Maybe we'll hit some of those people that aren't interested in going to one of the sporting events.
That's a good idea. I like that. I'm taking some
there's
notes.
Such a wide, you look at Pine Knob, there's such a wide variety of artists that come in there.
Sure.
And you may not think it, but whatever it is, with 140 people, we've got someone that's interested in whatever it is that night. I won't have a problem, finding a home for those tickets. And by kind of filtering who signs up, you're only getting people legitimately interested in those opportunities. So kind of try to make it, there's something for everybody with a variety of kind of give backs and raffles like that. On top of that, we do the company parties. We do one at the holidays. And this kind of goes back to the continuity and I'll say the history of the company and keeping some traditions. For years, they've done this big Christmas potluck, right? And they said, please don't change that. Please, we do this potluck here, don't, whatever you do, you can do something else for Christmas, but don't get rid of that. So I've kept some of those little things that they've always done in place, the smaller scale. I guess that's how I'm able to do some of the bigger stuff is I don't try to replace the smaller traditions. I let them keep those smaller ones because for them, those were the big deals. Those were the main events. That's what they look forward to so much that they still want those, even if we're going to do something bigger. So small things like that, keeping some of the company tradition intertwined with newer things to do. But we have quarterly all employee meetings. We do giveaways there. We do rewards for, anniversary awards for seniority based on how many years. We do perfect attendance because the manufacturing attendance is huge.
Smart.
We used to do raffles for gift cards on perfect attendance, and people love that. And this kind of happened by sometimes you find great things by mistake. So one meeting we went to, we forgot to get enough gift cards for one of the shifts for perfect attendance raffle. I'm like, oh man, what am I going to do? I've got nothing to raffle off. So I just kind of shot from the hip and said, you know what? Everyone who's on this shift that had perfect attendance, you're going to get a half-day paid vacation. No raffle, you automatically get it. So word got around on that, and they said, "Hey, can we just get the vacation and not have to do the raffle?"
Yeah, can we get that all the time?
So it's one of those things that it's easy for the company to do that, to give that, and people that have not been there that long, they may only have 2 weeks vacation, 10 days plus some personal days. It's not a lot of time off. And then other people that have been there longer have 3 weeks, 4 weeks or more and get a little bit more. So everybody's got something different that's
maybe important
makes them tick.
Yeah.
But the time off is always, I view something as fairly inexpensive for the company and goes a long way. Because like I said, I've kind of substituted that in when I had nothing else to give away, and now it comes back by request. So sometimes you find out what people like by mistake.
Okay. So I wanted to talk on like the auto market in general. Like what trends are you seeing? Like it's from my perspective, it's a funky time in automotive. Like there's some programs and clients that they're relatively busy and there's a lot of hiring being done within them. And then there's a lot of instances where that's not the case. You see what's going on with the big three and layoffs and things like that. Mm-hmm. What's your opinion?
The whole industry has definitely changed forever from COVID. So during COVID, we kind of hit a wall and completely shut down for a few months, and then slowly came back. And it was this whole, are we essential workers or are we not? And going and driving to work with a letter that says, "Hey, I'm allowed to be out here. I'm an essential worker." It was quite interesting times in the industry and changed things forever. And as far as in manufacturing, obviously that didn't shut down for too long, but it's kind of not been back to where it was. It's going to take at least 5 more years for things to be back at some of the run rates they were prior to COVID, in my opinion. And it's going to be a slow, gradual build back. And we bounced back. I mean, from 2020, each year kind of improved. Right now, it's a little bit slow. I think there's some question. Are we in a recession? Are we on the verge of one? Depends on who you ask. How's the election going to affect things? So it's
a lot of uncertainty,
a ton of uncertainty, and you can feel it in that you build inventory for your customers and ultimately for the OEMs, build up inventories and then kind of have this lull in orders. And the OEMs seem to be constantly building inventory to what they project demand to be. And they spent a lot of this earlier part of this year building up inventory, expecting giant demand in the spring and the summer that hasn't been that huge demand.
You can see it on the lots too.
Yeah, you can see it. And we built ahead pretty well to be down for the the week of the 4th of July. And when you build ahead, you kind of are banking on that demand being there when you come back. We came back from the 4th of July and we're still to this day, I mean, a couple months later, we're still sitting heavy on inventories from how light July was. And we're kind of a good temperature read on the industry because we have so many different customers shipping to so many different end platforms. So I get a good feel for what the demand is on the GM and the Ford trucks, as well as some of the foreign domestics with BMW and Mercedes and some of the other car brands that aren't necessarily the Detroit Big Three, but are building vehicles either in the U.S. or Mexico. So I think right now it's a little bit uncertainty. I expect it to be that way through the election, probably through the end of this year. But we had several years in a row coming out of COVID that were 5 or 10% year over year growth or improvement. And I think for one thing, you can only have that so many years in a row. Not that we're back to where we were to any ceiling, but I think it kind of things started at too fast of a pace that it's kind of leveled off a little bit. And I think, we're waiting for, inventory and demand are always chasing each other on vehicles, and it affects the whole supply chain. And for a while, inventory couldn't keep up with demand. Now we're waiting for demand to catch back up with the inventory. So, we've had things like, for our 3 plants, we had one of them that was continuously only needing to run 4 out of the 5 days a week. And I felt terrible with people only getting, 32 hours of work. So I realized after a handful of these, why shut down for 1 day a week? I could shut down for a full week, allow these people to claim unemployment for 1 week, then go back to 40 hours of work. So we've done some unique things to try to manage those challenges for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, being resourceful.
Yeah.
And looking at the whole picture and what's the best way to take care of everybody.
But yeah, absolutely. And each week's different. I mean, right now we're trying to sell more inventory than we build. And you always want to build the same as what you sell, but that's very much a pie in the sky a formula for being in the automotive manufacturing supply chain. You're always going to sell a little bit more. You're always going to do a little bit more of one or the other between sales and production. But you always try to keep them as close as you can.
And you're probably measuring, you guys probably have data sets and analytics that you're looking at to try and assess that.
Exactly. Going back to when I became a plant manager, I was big on this formula for manufacturing absorption. So my background in education wasn't finance, but I found certain things that I understood very well financially from a manufacturing standpoint, such as manufacturing absorption and variable overhead, and looking at your non-material costs and what are those doing, and then looking on a monthly basis. Hey, I've got cost of goods sold, but I also have applied costs, meaning what I sold has a certain set of costs involved, but what I built and actually incurred costs on has a whole separate level of costs. So when we look at the cost of what we sold versus our actual applied overhead of what we actually did, some months I'm seeing that, hey, we're spending a lot to build a lot more, and it's not all going out the door. So my cost of goods sold is low, but my applied overhead is higher. And then I have months that it's opposite. Hey, I've got high costs on my cost of goods sold, but I didn't even have to build that much this month to be able to do it. So you get this imbalance one way or the other. Ultimately, over time, the longer amount of time you look at it, the more even they are. But when you look at 1 month at a time, you can have a bit of a gap between what you sold and what you actually built, and that's because in the auto industry you've got this inventory stock, and you've got certain level of finished goods that you want to hold. I came from the world of holding only about 2 weeks of finished good inventory.
Okay.
Came over to the new company, they were holding about 6 weeks.
So
three times what I'm used to carrying. And that's, I look at that, that's a lot of cash that's sitting there. It's tying up a lot of cash, a lot of space.
So is that how you guys are still running it, or have you found
I tried to get back down,
or?
I've been working, for the last year and a half to get that down to about 3 or 4 weeks. So a happy medium.
So meet in the middle, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the 2 weeks, or even if you say just-in-time manufacturing, in my opinion, that concept's kind of gone out the door since COVID happened.
Okay.
It's not as easy to be just in time with some of the logistical challenges that are out there, and COVID kind of exposed the weaknesses in the supply chain, and that those who were practicing just in time were in big trouble, and those who had built up inventories and had contingencies were in a good spot. So it's made people more conservative. And what I mean by that is companies are holding a little bit more through all levels of the supply chain, knowing that it's not as easy to get raw materials.
Yeah.
In the same
it's
amount of time.
It's not just always going to flow. This way.
Used to be 2 or 4 week lead times for raw materials in this industry are now 6, 8, or 10 weeks for the same materials. So supply chain's been, affected at least semi-permanently from all that.
And I mean, you know more on the topic than me, but in my opinion, there's some things about that are pretty frustrating, and then there's some that are probably a little healthy in regards to keeping more conservative. Instead of just it's in and out, like having some kind of backup plan and being, hey, we need to allocate some more.
You can weather
operational spend to this. Like
exactly.
There's some good things in that too, I guess. So
yeah. I mean, everything costs more and takes longer to get. That said, once you have it, you've got a little bit more security, right? And you kind of look at, our raw materials resin for making plastic molded parts, and we look at the different price of raw materials out there, and we look at the different grades of material and what's the trend. Should we buy more now?
Yeah.
Should we not buy more now? Should we wait and buy? So you play it a little bit more like a open market, especially if you have the space to store it. You can be a bit more effective, but companies are definitely utilizing that timing of buying more like a stock market than they used to, because they used to have strict rules of only can buy this much at a time, at this frequency, and now you've got traders on the raw material market.
So wanted to talk about, you had mentioned, something that's a strategy for us, and like the one business that I did acquire outside of Workforce Solutions, it was someone that is not retiring, but starting to, like, they owned a couple businesses, and the one that we bought from them is based out of Ohio, and they live here in Michigan. And so there's the physical responsibility of that person to go down to Ohio, sometimes. And I believe they were in their early 70s and just ready to start making some changes. I think ultimately their wife wanted them home a little bit more, and the grandkids and all this kind of stuff. And so he sold the business to us, is the long and short of it. So On the acquisition side, I see a lot of opportunity with baby boomers retiring to do those types of things. But I want to talk to you about it on the skilled trades talent side of things, because the same is true over here, is that you have all these baby boomers that have immense amount of talent, in this area and across the country, but specifically, this area is one of the best, in my opinion, for skilled trades and engineering talent, but a lot of it's retiring.
Mm-hmm.
And the balance of people entering, the industry compared to going out and projected out over the next 5 to 10 years, it's a concern.
Yep.
And so how are you guys approaching that? What are your thoughts on that?
So our biggest skilled trade in-house is our tool room. We build all our own molds.
Okay.
We do CNC machining and build our own tooling, and that tool making is a art and skilled trade on its own that is very critical to us. That takes a lot of experience. It's not, I can think I know math and I'm handy and it's going to take a while. We plan for typically at least 6 months just to evaluate if somebody is going to be able to make it long term doing that type of job. And we've had a handful of retirements in the last few years of longtime tool makers with that talent. And it's tough because you keep going back to ask these guys who are retirement age, hey, can you stay on board longer? Yeah. I don't have your replacement yet. Or once I find them, can we overlap? Can we absorb, what you have and try to pass it on to somebody else? That's the biggest thing for me, is getting, for what you said exactly, is getting as early of a commitment on a date as possible.
Yeah.
Because then we start that transition. We try to start that transition 6 months to a year in advance to overlap with those people, because it's not something you plug and play a new person into. So we've got 7 tool makers in our tool room. They stay pretty busy. They build anywhere from 15 to 20 molds per year and work on one shift. But their shift hours expand and reduce based on the workload. We don't add extra shifts. We keep everything there during one shift during the day. The experience with the retirement age is a challenge, and definitely more skill and talent going out the door than coming in. I'm lucky that we have some younger guys that went to engineering school that have great CAD experience, that understand CNC machining, that can do it very well, but they can't. The 2 or 3 of them can't do it all themselves either.
Yeah.
They need more trained, skilled talent, and they always get a little nervous, rightfully so, when they know someone's retiring, because it's fewer guys to do the same amount of work, and that even with someone new, it's going to be a learning curve. So in some cases, we've brought on more senior retirement age people that have retired and wanted to come back, even to do part-time work.
There you go. I like that.
And if you kind of fit the puzzle together, you could find, hey, yeah, these 2 guys are 60, 70, but they still want something to do 10 to 20 hours a week, and they're really good. They're really skilled at it. So you got to get creative sometimes on it. But the biggest thing is that foresight of having a commitment date. And, in most cases, I've seen people are more apt to extend and push that date back than move it up once they make a commitment about their retirement. For whatever reason, people have a harder time stepping away than they think they're going to.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's, it's home life and home situation, grandkids and wives and others that are saying, hey, you're really retiring this time. You're not just giving them a date and then going to extend it. So we definitely see that as well. And we've been big on trying to promote from within and develop the internal talent. And I'm big on succession planning, very early planning for succession, and kind of having, I've gone as far as having a second org chart of, if this piece or this player stepped out, who's the next one in that? right?
Like the next person up.
Next person up
Yeah.
for every single position.
I like that.
And
Yeah.
it's,
I was
it's like, I look at it like a team, not to go back to sports or whatever,
Yeah.
but you look at your depth chart and
Yep.
it's like, sometimes the guy that has to step in for whoever's hurt or retiring is better than the one who was there. You just never got to see him in action in that position. So I've always got that, I'll say, second roster or backup team for the org chart in mind.
Well, that's where I wanted to. So you guys push a family environment, and I think we generally mean the same thing. I frame it a little bit different. I compare what we're doing to, like, we want a high performance culture, so we want to run it like a sports team.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like there to be, family aspects, and hey, whose family doesn't have disagreements or fights or things that happen or whatever, but like, we want to be an environment that is family oriented and supportive of the family, and try and work as a tight unit, but that holds each other at a very high standard. That's the way I try and communicate that. I don't know if you agree with that or see it differently. Or.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, I'm at a point, age-wise, career-wise, I'm associating with people that are in similar points in life, or have been at, in similar points of having young kids, trying to grind every day. And it's.
Do you have young kids?
Yeah. I have two daughters, 5 and 3 years old.
Oh, what? 6 and 2.5, 2 daughters.
Yeah.
So right there.
And, I think that I became a lot easier person to work with and work for after I had kids.
I don't know how other people feel about that, but I feel that has been true.
Because I can understand, I can get down, I can get into people's shoes a little bit more on family life and family situations versus when I was single, not married, no kids. I was traveling the world. I had no restrictions, come and go. I didn't have patience for anybody who couldn't keep up with that pace.
It's interesting to hear you say that, because I evaluate that in my experiences, like leading a company as a single, not married, no kids, and then being younger and having people that were older that had and I just look at the way that I operated then. It's like, man, you were kind of like a one trick pony on the way that you kind of pushed or led, and getting married, having children has been a good through actually doing that. It's rounded me out more to be able to communicate with those people better. I think it shows in that we've retained more of those people. We have more of those people on our team. I know I've learned, and had to work on, but learned how to communicate, in a way that's like, hey, like, we can be flexible. We can, like, this morning, one of my direct reports, her little daughter's got COVID, and like yesterday she's like, hey, can I go home and, take care of her? She's in rough. Go ahead. And this morning or late last night, like, hey, how's she doing? I got a text this morning. I'm like, just stay with her, do your stuff from here, whatever you got to do. But like, go back 9-10 years, and I probably would have like looked at that differently than now. And I think it's a good thing.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing. And I was told by a lot of my mentors, as well as by my father, hey, you're going to change. You're going to mellow out over time. You're going to look at things differently. You're not going to, you're not going to have that same edge.
Yeah.
Not that you want to lose motivation or hunger. And I'm not necessarily talking about, it's more of the understanding and how you work with people. You're not going to be as I don't know, frank or black and white. You're going to be a little bit more understanding as a leader, and it's going to make you better to be more understanding of all people's different situations. Now, are there some people that want to work from home more than others? Yeah, that's its own separate dynamic. I avoid having, I don't know how you do it, I try to avoid having a specific policy.
Okay.
And I've had a lot of pressure to have an official policy. It's tough in manufacturing because
Yeah.
you got to tell, 80% of your people are hourly. They have to be there every day regardless to do their job. And then the other flip side of it, hey, we have more skilled, more salary people that don't need to be there. How does it look to the rest of the workforce? How does it affect them to see some people have the flexibility to work from home? How much are they entitled to based on their rank? And that becomes, can be more of a sticking point with some people than others. I've avoided that whole strict policy. I've treated it kind of case by case. I tell people, hey, if you need something, just communicate it with me. We'll figure it out. We'll work it out together. I don't like to have a blank check or a blanket statement of, yeah, you can work from home this much, this little, or, I'm flexible, I'm reasonable. But I also, I try to keep things fair. And I guess when you're in manufacturing, you've got that big portion of the workforce that cannot do their job from home.
Yeah.
That sees those that do.
And I've had dynamic.
And I've had to be really sensitive to that. So it's a daily balancing act on that for sure.
Yeah. To answer your question to me on that, we got so free with that kind of through 2020, 2021 and saw a lot of good, we've grown immensely. Like we're approaching over 3 times growth from where we sat kind of coming into that, that time frame. So we've grown a lot in the last 4 years. We found we offer a ton of flexibility. Like we were talking about some of the schedules where we have people flex in, flex out and different stuff. But as we filled up more space within here and just in some areas, we've had to add back a little bit of direction because we were finding that some of the complete freedom was causing some confusion, right down to hey, where do I sit today? Well, you sit anywhere. No one has a desk, spot, just come pop in. And again, that we saw some good things from that for a period of time. And then we've kind of it's a phased approach, right? To where we're still hire across the country, which would be mostly remote. We'll still put people in flex roles. Generally they have a flex day, but to your, look, if something comes up, they're able to kind of toggle those things around. But we have put in some general formatting so that we can create a little bit more structure so there's not confusion. And we've got, even with our, I'm laughing because with our dress policy, we're pretty lax, pretty loose. But even with having, some hey, we don't need the 5-inch inseam shorts, in here, and
there's a balance
and Budweiser t-shirts and backwards hats. Sure. So it's man, we need to, it just, I love the flexibility that we provide, but we've had to check it a little bit. So it's hey guys, here's how we want to present ourselves.
You have to reel it in a little bit.
Correct. So we're in the process of doing a little bit of that, but I still think compared to where I came from, and I'm sure it's changed there too, but you could only wear blue or plain or I think blue, black or white dress shirt. You had to shave every day.
Yeah.
And if you were on a client meeting, you needed to be in a suit and a tie.
Yeah.
Even if it's a manufacturing facility where no one wore a suit and a tie.
Right.
It's okay, we didn't want to be that rigid and but we've reined it back in a little bit.
It was, for me, it was a big adjustment coming from TI and that corporate environment. And TI was very traditional with just workplace dress. There were no jeans days. Even once other companies were starting to have at least jeans on Fridays, no torn up jeans, but still wear a collared shirt, dress like I am right now. You could wear that on a Friday at a lot of places. TI never really adopted that mindset, kept things very formal, very traditional. And for me, that was an adjustment that going into this smaller company, much more casual.
Yeah.
I would never dress how I did at our old corporate headquarters at TI to do the job I'm doing now, because I'd go out on the manufacturing floor, and I wouldn't be able to talk to people the same way and relate to them the same way, and even be accepted with a level of comfort
Exactly.
the same way. So we've gone pretty casual. At first I said, well, I at least still wear the jacket, if I'm meeting with a customer or whatnot.
Yeah.
And I started meeting with customers,
And no one's wearing a jacket.
and they're they come visit in polo and jeans, and hey, why are you dressing like that? So it's kind of it's changed in a lot of industries, and it's changed quite a bit. But yeah, it's more now industry by industry, but for sure in our world, it's become more casual.
Yeah.
In the office, I don't know if that's an age thing. I don't know if that's just the way things have evolved, but I think everybody's welcomed that to a certain degree. And like I said, like the work from home thing, it's people benefiting from the flexibility without abusing anything. And the work from home or remote work thing, I always say, hey, no preset schedule. You tell me what you need, I'll work with you. That said, when you're not here and you're not on vacation, make sure your job's still getting done, and I can still reach you if we have a major issue. And they understand that, and they respect that. So what I've tried to avoid is, work from home day just becoming a vacation day, and at the larger companies, you're not as visible, right? The individual employee at a big OEM or big tier one where you've got 20,000 or more employees, they may not notice on a day in, day out level if you're really
until
on
it's time
vacation
to
or working from home.
make the cuts.
Yeah.
And then it flips.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. But
and the whole adaptation to that, I think people that worked in very strict in office environments before COVID, it's a big transition for them. But we've got a younger wave of people that this is all they're going to know.
All they're going to know.
Right? Coming out of college, this is going to be the way it was the whole time for them.
Well, that's our big thing that we prefer, if I'm talking to someone and they've been 20 years like working in an office environment, hopefully within recruiting and staffing, what we do, but like if they've had exposure to that and they know what they're doing, well, like a lot of it comes down to clearly defined metrics and looking at that and like, are you executing are you executing on those? Are you abiding within the core values and culture, and are you servicing the customers, which is part of the previous thing I said. Well, okay, that's pretty good. But if someone's never, if they were coming into the workforce post 2020 and they've never worked in an office environment or environment where they had to communicate, face to face with people, we prefer those people to be in office doing that, because like we believe that's an important skill set to at least have on your tool belt. It's not needed for everyone. If we've done that for 15, 20 years, I'm sure you would agree there's like, it's important for us to do that, but it's also effective to be able to work from home and get you can get some stuff done that way. So in a production-based role or something like that, and as long as someone's had that exposure, like I'm more open to putting them on our remote team or flexing them in and out. And it's not that we won't hire someone remote that has no experience, but that's where we've had the hardest time with that, is if they've never been exposed to actually being around people in a professional environment.
Definitely a new dynamic to manage that.
It is.
People weren't talking about 10 years ago, really.
Okay, so I got two more questions for you, and they kind of bounce into different areas. So one I didn't plan to ask you, but I'm just curious. Hearing about your dad having like the foresight to like, hey, like I'm going to need to pivot, based on technology. Have you talked to him at all about current day and his opinions on like AI and everything going on in technology? And I'm just interested to hear what, if you'll let us behind that, the veil of that, and what's his thought process?
I get so busy in the day to day of running the business that he'll make sure I'm staying up on certain topics that I
Okay.
might not be, digging
Thinking
in
about day to day.
day to day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he'll, he's big on, he'll bring up AI. Hey, what are you doing in AI? And like, I think he sent me something to that effect, like a month into my new job. Right. So when I switched and took over this company, I'm just trying to transition through the new ownership and just learn what's
you got
going
a couple
on.
things going on.
Yeah, let's walk before we run. But he's saying that to plant a seed. He's not saying that because he thinks that I've got some initiative or strategy already implemented. He's wanting to plant the seed. So I'm at least starting to think about where the industry's going. How can we use AI with predictive and preventative maintenance on our equipment? How can we use it with our sales analytics and the trends? There's so much capability out there when it comes to consumer demand patterns and what kind of vehicles people are going to like and what that means in terms of product lines we're going to offer. So I've said, I've embraced it. I've said, hey, it sounds like something for someone that wants part-time work like him in retirement to help me look at. So,
Sure.
so those types of things I pull him in on because they're not everyday day-to-day items. They're kind of the big picture items that he can work on and dig into on his own. And we've started to look at how can we tie that in with customer ordering patterns, vehicle forecasting, inventory management, MRP systems. So it's definitely changing. And I think those that aren't considering what solutions there are out there and where technology is going are going to be at a big disadvantage, not necessarily tomorrow, but in years from now for sure.
It's coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that
it's crazy what it can do. I mean,
yeah, we're testing out, I actually have, this is reminding me. So I'm speaking at an event for a friend of mine later this month, and he ran another event a couple weeks ago, all around AI and recruiting technology and stuff. And I haven't listened to any of that yet, but we literally had someone, like, we bought the recordings because it was free, but you could buy the recordings. And we have someone that their whole project is to go through that and figure out what we want to put into like test mode. Just to, not that we're going to go all in on it necessarily yet, but like, okay, like,
gives you a plan.
There's a whole week of speakers on this, like literally, like their big project for Q3 is to go through those and figure out what we want to beta test.
Nice.
And so it's like trying to, like, it's not all I'm not going to obsess over this and not execute day to day, but like better keep your ear to the ground and think about, the future. And
it gives you an advantage that others won't have if they're not doing it for sure.
Well, you could see why you wouldn't, right? Because there's so much just going, like you're firefighting day to day.
Exactly.
Okay, so last question. Let's lighten it up a bit. I know that you're into cars, big car family. I've never seen your dad's car collection, but I've heard of the infamous car collection.
The car collection.
Yeah. What's your favorite car and why?
Favorite car that he's got is probably the new Porsche GT2, GT3s, GT2 RS.
Okay.
Just because of where I drive them, they're out at the M1. Those are some of the best track cars. They're not necessarily going to see, not that they're not able to do it top speed, but they're not going to be the fastest on the straightaway there. So if you're in a Ferrari 488 F8 or any of the top Ferraris, Lamborghinis, or even the new Corvette Z06, brand new Corvette Z06 that I just drove out there yesterday, you can hit that 130 plus on the straightaway.
Okay.
With those
out of M1, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
With those super high powered sports cars, but some of the best handling cars, you're only getting to maybe 120, 125 on the straightaway before you're starting to slow down and go into the next turn. And I've always questioned, hey, how much time am I losing on the track not reaching those top speeds in this Porsche that's still fast, but this thing's built for turning, not for the straightaway.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you know, I've talked to a lot of the pro drivers out there that have set some of the fastest times, and they don't have to go much over over 120 on the straight. It's more what you're doing in the turns.
In the turns.
So long story short, I like the Porsche GT2, GT3, GT4, the GT2 RS. They're amazing track cars. Shorter wheelbase, great turning, extremely forgiving. You may not feel that top end speed, but you're going to more than make up for it in what you can do in turning and handling on the track. So
cool.
Yeah,
I like it.
Those are mine.
So you had mentioned, I didn't realize that like guys have the business that's involved, like you said, the media business and entertainment.
The sports industry.
Is that involved with the track that was built down in Florida, or is that something different? Or
yeah, so the track in Florida,
'cause I've seen like videos of that. It looks amazing.
Yeah, it's getting close to being done. So Brad Olashansky, who started the M1, who's a good family friend, he's kind of out of I think he's still got a garage at M1, but he's not one of the owners of it anymore. He got out of that, and now he's taking that business model and doing it in Florida. And
okay.
And my dad's got a close relationship with him, and my dad kind of was a big supporter for Brad when he was selling car condos on like a Lego sized poster. I'll say,
just like, had this idea,
little mini models that could fit on a table.
Yeah,
and he's trying to sell these, units for a couple $100,000. It's not a small investment, and asking people to sign up. So you got this stretch of original units over there, which are all founders or original members who actually bought units off of sketches and small models. Now a lot of those have been resold and sold for 3 times what they did well on. Yeah, and
which good for them.
And others who are buying now, they've got an existing product. It's not the same type of investment or risk per se, but my dad was a very early adopter of this concept, and him and Brad have been pretty close over it. And yeah, the one down in the Enclave down in Florida is close to being done.
What part of Florida is it?
I think it's right in Tampa.
It is. That's
so it's where the I-75 intersects with the highway that goes to Orlando. So it's the busiest.
At 4.
Yeah, I think it is. So it's one of the busiest interchanges in Florida. So I haven't been down there yet, but it looks pretty awesome. And the whole Wilko racing thing on the side. So we sponsor both a Ferrari Challenge Cup car and a Porsche Sprint Series car. So
okay.
Those are really my dad's 2 favorite brands, Ferrari and Porsche.
Yeah.
He collects other vehicles, but those for on-track racing are the 2 that he's into the most. That we've gotten into the racing sponsorship.
I'd be scared to take my Ferrari out on the track. I'd be scared I'd crash it.
It's scary. I mean,
I've heard some stories of some.
Oh yeah, my dad just crashed. I mean,
oh, he did?
He's all right. Yeah.
Oh man, I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, he when you do it that, when you're doing it that often, you're prone to do it. I mean, his vehicle is being fixed. And he's okay. Not everybody's as lucky. When you take a car like that on a track,
yeah,
you're not able to insure it.
That's what I've heard. Yes.
It's pay to play. I mean, you're playing at with all the risk. And
probably part of the rush, but
his more was side damage on the Porsche.
Okay.
When he was racing, I think he was in Georgia. There's that Road Atlanta course, but yeah, they've raced all over. Most recently, Watkins Glen, and had been all over the place. But yeah, it's dangerous. I'm not a side by side, driver that's going out and doing these events where you're racing other cars.
That's even wilder.
Yeah,
yeah. That's crazy.
I like the time trials. I like going out on the track, seeing just on my own what kind of line I can run.
Okay.
What my time is. Just me out. Me against the clock. Not going out and competing
with yourself.
Yeah. It's a whole different animal. So M1 is not a side-by-side racetrack. It's a street course, but it's not side-by-side racing. You're racing for time, and there can be more than one vehicle on the track, but you're not really racing each other. There's specific protocols for passing, which keep it safe.
I was gonna say, because I was at an event out there and I saw multi cars on the track, but they weren't like hugging each other. You're not supposed to like that.
There's only really only one or two spots that are safe to pass, and there's a protocol. I mean, when you're out there as a member of the track, you could take your car out there. There's designated open lap times. Last night they had from 5 to 8. Anybody that's a member could take their car out on the track. They only allow a certain number of vehicles out there. But if someone's faster than you, whether you like their car more or not, or you think your car's faster than them, there's certain protocols that by which you have to follow to let somebody pass certain spots, certain signals that I can think, hey, I'm in a faster car and a better driver. I'm not going to let them pass. You kind of have to check that at the door to keep things safe and say, hey, if I'm being pushed by them, I'm gonna follow protocol and let them. And to be honest, I like the challenge of chasing somebody more than being pushed by somebody. So yeah, it's fun. It's a cool environment. Something unique to do. It's something we take our employees to get to experience, and some of our customers to get to do.
That's cool.
So we use it a lot. Yeah. There's a way to use some of those, really cool items that I'm fortunate to be exposed to, and allow others that otherwise wouldn't get a chance to come see and do it, which is the most fun part of it, to be honest.
I'm gonna butcher this saying, but I was listening to a podcast this morning, and I'm really gonna butcher it, but basically talked about you don't use people, build relationships with people. You don't use people to get things, but if you're fortunate enough to acquire things, share them with people, and give them that experience. Like let them taste that, if they have the opportunity to go out and, potentially earn that for themselves someday. So I hear that in a lot of things you're sharing about like the tickets and
I get a big rush of taking someone to their first Lions game, or watching someone sit in a Ferrari or Porsche drive on the track for the first time ever. I mean, that's as good as it gets to me, to be honest.
Getting out of my comfort zone this weekend, because I'm not like this huge car guy. I got a nice car, but I'm doing my first car show where I go take my Ferrari out, and my father-in-law's big into cars and stuff, so he's excited about it.
Nice.
I'm it's just out of my comfort zone, but it'll be cool to just talk to people, and you meet. I've gone to some shows with him, and always meet just cool people, down to earth. I was at one. This guy had a couple, Ford GTs there, and just was the nicest guy. You probably know who it was. I don't remember his name, but it's just cool. Some of the conversations that come up and stuff like that. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll have to get you out on the track for sure.
Baby steps.
Even if you don't want to bring your own car, we got cars that go on the track.
I'm going to an event with our church. I think it's on the 20. I don't know. Later this month, I'm going to 27th. And they're doing some kind of drive out. I don't think they're letting people drive. I think they take you
right along.
And, so that'll be my first exposure.
First step. That's the first step, and that's what I tell people is ride along with a pro driver, ride along with an experienced driver. It doesn't have to be a pro driver, but there's really good instructors at M1, and they do ride alongs and they do lead follow. So lead follow is where you're following a pro driver or an instructor, and you're learning
where to turn.
Yeah, and they're going to be able to tell very quickly how much you're not able to keep up with them, and they're going to tempo their speed and their and what they do to help you. So it's called lead follow. It's great. But I say even before that, ride along with somebody just to see how you feel going at those speeds through some of those turns. And some people can only drive, can't ride, and they get motion sickness riding along. Some are afraid to drive and just want to ride along, and some steer clear of it altogether. So
I'm gonna give it a shot. I'm gonna get out on the track. So I'll sit in the passenger seat first. So, well, cool. Thanks for coming on, Bill.
Yeah, thanks.
It was great having you today. Enjoyed the convo. If you watched today or listened today and you got something out of this, we just ask that you share this with one other person. There's a lot of good nuggets in here today. So, Bill, thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
Thanks
you.
for joining us today. Have a great afternoon, everyone.